Hi, my name is Deepak Malhotra, and I'm a professor of negotiations at Harvard Business School. I'm also the co-author of the book Negotiation Genius and author of the book Negotiating the Impossible. In this series of videos, I'm talking about the topic of negotiation, and in each clip, I talk about one key idea, an insight, an approach, a tactic, or a principle that I hope will help you as you navigate your own deals and disputes. In this video, I want to talk about a specific kind of hardball tactic, the last-minute demand. You've negotiated a deal, it's gone on for a long time, you think it's ready to be signed, and all of a sudden the other side throws out just one more demand. What to do about it? Well, I'm reminded of a story that a former student of mine who ran his own business told me once. He was in the business of real estate development, and he was working on a commercial development project. And after about 9 months of negotiating a pretty important deal, a deal that was going to make or break his year, on the very last day, his client, before signing the deal, said, "Wait a second, there's just one more thing we need to change." And the demand he made regarded the penalty clause for any delays in construction. Now, in fairness, the two sides had already discussed the issue, and they'd already come up with a penalty clause. The language is already in the contract. What the other side was demanding on this last day was a huge increase, something like a 10 times larger penalty in case there were delays in construction. Now, my student was pretty turned off by this. He thought it was unfair, he thought it was unethical, he thought it was too aggressive. If this was an important issue, he should have brought it up earlier. And so my student told me that in that moment, he thought about his options. Very quickly, he came to the conclusion, I would love to walk away from this on principle, but I just can't afford to. The other side knows I'm too invested to walk away at this point. Too much is riding on this deal for me. And he's right, I can't just walk away, which made him even more upset. So the idea of walking away on principle was crossed off the list. And then he said, I had two options. I could just accept the new proposal and do my best not to be delayed, or I could try to haggle a little bit and try to meet somewhere in the middle, maybe between what we had originally agreed to and this new number. He said he was about to do that when it occurred to him something we had talked about in class many years ago. He said, it occurred to me, thinking back to your class on negotiations, what you would advise to do in that moment is to, instead of just responding to this new proposal or reacting to this new proposal, look for more information. Seek to better understand what's really going on here. And he said, I thought about that for a moment, and it occurred to me that I actually might have a third option. I said to myself, the student told me, I said to myself, you know what, maybe it's not right that he made this demand on the last day, that he waited till he knew I was desperate before he sprung this on me. But if I think about it, in this moment, he could have asked for anything. If he was going to wait till I was desperate and make a demand, he could have asked for a lower price. He could have asked for some other terms. Why did he choose this particular demand to put into the contract? The one thing I can definitely deduce from this, he said, is that a delay is clearly something this buyer does not want to have to deal with. He could have asked for anything. He's asking for a higher penalty in case of a delay. So now I know not having a larger delay is a huge issue for this person. So he said, my response to him was, listen, I don't think it's particularly appropriate on the last day to reopen one issue in a very complex negotiation. I think this is something we've discussed before, and I think we came to a good understanding. But I'll tell you what, if this is really important to you, I'm willing to engage. If this is something that matters a lot to you, I don't want to dismiss it out of hand. If my client brings something up, I want to make sure that I understand what the problem is, and I always want to make sure the person is satisfied. So from my point of view, we need to balance these two things. Is it reasonable to bring this up on the last day? Probably not. On the other hand, do you have some legitimate concerns? And if so, let's make sure those are handled. As the conversation continued, the proposal he made was the following. He said, I figured if he doesn't want to delay, it's also possible that the sooner this development gets finished, the better off he's going to be. So the proposal he ended up making to the other side was the following. He said, I will agree to a higher penalty if there's a delay, if in exchange you will increase the price you pay to me if I can get this project done sooner than the deadline we had agreed to, while still meeting all of the specs and all of the quality standards. They discussed the proposal a little bit more, and that's what they agreed to. On the one side, the penalty would be higher. On the other side, there would be a reward, an incentive to finish the development even sooner. And actually, both sides were better off having had that discussion and revising the contract. Now, that's clearly not what the other side had wanted when he made that proposal. He was just trying to get a better deal for himself. So he made that demand. But what effective negotiators do is they interpret every demand as an opportunity. Everything the other side demands of you is an opportunity, clearly, for you to create value for them. But if you're in a position to create value for the other side, that's a good thing. If you can create value for the other side, you might be able to monetize the value you create for the other side and get paid for doing so. So if we think about what happened in this story, there was already a deal. The other side started making additional demands. Our side thought about it and said, wait, if they're making more demands, clearly there's something I can do that's of value to them. Now let's see if we can find a way to give them what they want in exchange for something that we also want. If you start getting into the habit of not being annoyed or frustrated when the other side makes demands of you, but instead recognizing that when the other side makes demands, it's good news. It tells you that you are bringing some value to the table or could bring some additional value to the table. By interpreting demands as opportunities, you're much more likely to create more value and capture a piece of it for yourself. Good luck.